So we can start the chanting straight away. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sammasambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sammasambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sammasambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Dutayambi Buddham saranam gacchami, Dutayambi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Dutayambi Sangham saranam gacchami, Tatayambi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tatayambi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Tatayambi Sangham saranam gacchami. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May they be free from suffering and its causes. May they never be parted from the happiness beyond suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment to the near, and aversion from the far. I shall cause this. Great compassionate Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every types of offerings, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all of my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in all the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for all sentient beings. I dedicate the virtues of myself and others to the great enlightenment. However innumerable all sentient beings are, I vow to save them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Tayata Gate Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Tayata Gate Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Tayata Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. So now time for some meditation. And I encourage you as well, as you're waiting to be let into the meeting, you should meditate as well. Don't fall into the trap of waiting, and causing anxiety for yourself to get into the meeting. Sort of like when we, wait at a traffic light if you're driving, waiting for that green light. Just calm your mind, enjoy the red light for a little while. So now it's just time to calm the body, release the tension from the body. From your lower body, from the hips down to the tips of your toes. And from your upper body as well, from the hips up to the shoulders and down to the end of your fingers. And from all around your head, your face, make sure you're not clenching your jaw or frowning. Maybe a nice little slight smile on your face, nice and relaxed. Now briefly scan your whole body again to see if there's any more tension that you can release. And now bring your mind to the feeling of your breath as you breathe in and out of your lungs. Breathing in your nose, right into your lungs, and then breathing out again. That's all we have to do right now. The most important physical thing that we do, we will now focus on. The breathing process. If thoughts arise in your mind or any other mental activity, don't cling to it or grasp at it. Don't try to forcefully push it away or deny it. By refocusing on your breath, just let it go naturally. And if your mind becomes dull, then wake it up a little bit by focusing more brightly on your breath. And now we would be kind to ourselves for a few minutes in silence by focusing on the breath. So now we can feel very pleased with ourselves for engaging in this meditation. And now fill yourself with universal loving kindness. Sending loving kindness to yourself, being your best friend. Filling yourself with so much loving kindness now that it overflows outwards, radiates outwards, initially to your loved ones, and to strangers, and even those people you find difficult, may even regard as enemies. May all of these different types of people in your life, and ones not in your life, may they be happy and have the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be at peace. May they be friendly and harmless. Now gradually radiate this loving kindness out further and further to now all living beings around your immediate area. All of those living beings that you have an attraction towards, ones you don't really know about, as well as those that you may even find scary or even repulsive. May they also be happy, free from suffering, and be at peace. Now radiate the loving kindness out throughout your whole state or county. And other states and counties throughout your whole country. And other countries throughout the whole world. And other worlds throughout the solar system. And other solar systems throughout the galaxy. And other galaxies throughout the universe. And radiate your loving kindness throughout infinite space, without limit. We are all interconnected throughout infinite space. Now also be present here and now, and we will recite the dedication prayer. Due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of the Buddha, so that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious bodhicitta not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. And may the precious, precious view of shunyata not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. Excuse me. So we will continue our discussion about the 6 paramitas today. And I will discuss the different types within each. Okay, so each of the paramitas, the 6 of them, they have 3 aspects to them, major ones. Of course, they can be broken up even further. And then so I'll discuss that in reasonable detail. And then probably next week we'll go on to individual ones and speak about these aspects in more detail again. So I think last week I gave you some homework, I think. Do you remember some contemplations? So I think hopefully you have put the homework into practice. If not, that's okay. It's fine. It's not as if we're in school. Don't have to pass any exams. But just pick it up now, so I'll remind you about that. It was in response to some questions about getting over our self-centeredness, and how to, develop this relative bodhicitta, both the aspirational bodhicitta as well as the practical bodhicitta. How can we do this more and more? And what was the other aspect of the question? Oh, that's right, and maintain pure intentions in everything. So the contemplations were to contemplate on the outcomes or the effects of good qualities, good intentions. Contemplate on the benefits that this creates, as well as contemplating on the outcomes, the negative outcomes of having bad intentions. And if you do this and do it with clarity as much as possible, and really, you could say, convince yourself to maintain the positive or the good intentions. Very important. And then as much as possible, if bad intentions arise, then you become more able then to perceive them and then let them go, purify them, okay, and change them. So the more that we do this, the more we can contemplate like this, the more we get inside our mind, and then we can clearly perceive our intention. We're not perfect, so we're not always going to have perfect intention. But the more that we correct ourselves if we have bad intention, the more it becomes a habit to do so. And eventually we're able to then, naturally do this without even thinking about it. And eventually, of course, leads to having good intentions all the time. The intention that we really want is the bodhicitta intention. But to develop this intention, you have to contemplate the suffering of others, which also takes our mind off our own self-centeredness. That's not to bum ourselves out now. It's not to make ourselves feel down, but to develop more care, more consideration of the difficulties that others go through. The suffering of birth, the suffering of giving birth, the suffering, everyday suffering, as I mentioned, the suffering of impermanence, and this samsara, which is, suffering pervades the whole of samsara, you could say, even though there's some happiness along the way. Okay, there's maybe two types of happiness, you could say. There's this fleeting happiness that comes from almost like an adrenaline rush sometimes, from satisfying the senses. And then there is more of a lasting type of happiness that you get from practicing the Dharma. And then continue to do this, and this becomes a little bit more natural. But of course, this is still conditioned happiness, isn't it? So therefore, it's a form of unsatisfactoriness or suffering. So contemplate the suffering of others. Important to do so. But important not to make ourselves get down thinking about this. So often, though, I noticed in the past for myself, when I was really focusing on this many years ago, I would always compare it to my own sufferings. So because there's that self-centeredness creeping in again, isn't it? So try not to do that, even though we can compare it, but don't attach to it. For instance, if you contemplate somebody or some people that are sick, groups of people may be sick in a certain way, then you think, oh, well, I hope I don't get that. But actually, that's fine, but still your focus is on developing more compassion for others at that time, not to create more worries for yourself or more paranoia and anxiety, okay? The next one was to contemplate the impermanent nature and also the empty nature of everything, actually, but your mind and your body, related to the 5 skandhas, as we've discussed in detail. And trying to find a self there. Is there a self? Is the self in the mind? Is the self in the body? Is the self in the whole of the body or parts of the body? Is it in both the mind and the body, or neither the mind and the body? Contemplate like this. Does it exist? Does it not exist? Does it both exist and not exist? Or does it not exist? Or neither, I should say. I won't go into detail with that. I'm finding that this introduction is too long now. I want to get onto the subject again. But I just wanted to remind you to practice these contemplations. Really good for your practice, especially now that we're on to the 6 parameters and talking a little bit more about bodhicitta, relative bodhicitta initially, and then even ultimate bodhicitta eventually, okay? Important for you to do these contemplations. Remember that the initial one I just mentioned before about contemplating the outcomes of the good intentions and bad intentions, this also helps us to deepen our understanding of the law of karma, the law of cause and effect, okay? There was something else that came in. There was a query could we please study the Diamond Sutra? I'll just be very brief with this. I did answer in reasonable detail by text, and the last time I taught the Diamond Sutra was, I don't know, something like 8 to 10 years ago. Some of you would have been there at the Yunyang Temple when we were doing the Saturday classes there. And it took from February until December to do this, okay? So we went into quite a lot of detail. There may have been a couple of weeks that we had off because maybe I was away or something, but generally that you could say that was probably about 40 classes that it took to go through the whole sutra. So right now we won't do that, but it is a teaching on emptiness, okay? And it's also a teaching on the other parameters as well, based on emptiness, based on realizing the emptiness, the wisdom aspect. And so every time we mention this, the parameters, you could say we're teaching from these sutras like the Diamond Sutra, like the Heart Sutra, and other perfection of wisdom sutras. So yes, we will. I'm very happy to do that. In fact, it was very sad, you could say in a way, when we had to stop these classes last year in about the middle of March 2020 because of the COVID situation arising. The advanced class, the second class on the Saturdays, this was it. It was commentary on the Diamond Sutra. Where the first class, open to everybody. Of course, both of them open to everybody, but the first class specifically, we were talking about meditation in theory and practice. So we've already gone through that in these classes, especially when we were talking about the concentration aspect and the different levels of absorption and so forth. So yes, I'm very happy to teach the Diamond Sutra again, but specifically not right now. But like I said, it is included in these teachings. What else was there? Also, just to reiterate, the parameters practices antidotes for the opposite, you could say. So generosity is obviously the antidote for self-centeredness and greed and miserliness. Then morality or discipline is obviously the antidote for a lack of morality, and also you could say laziness or even engaging in meaningless activities and the like. Then patience is the antidote for impulsively reacting and anger and hatred and dislike. And then, of course, enthusiastic effort or diligence is the antidote, once again, for laziness, for having a lack of interest in practicing the Dharma, for having a lack of interest in developing the bodhicitta intention, and also maintaining a wholesome state of mind and relinquishing the unwholesome states of mind. Concentration is obviously the antidote to calm the mind from having a distracted mind and also a dull mind. And of course, wisdom is the ultimate antidote, which uproots ignorance, which is the cause of all of these other ones. So that's in as antidotes, practice as antidotes. I'll go into more detail with this in the coming classes as well. That's kind of like the reiteration I wanted to do, but a question did come in before we go into the details that I mentioned earlier. Is dwelling on the past memories for pleasure bad? Maybe the answer to this is yes and no. It depends. It's not really bad. You're better off, if you're going to dwell on the past, you're better off dwelling on the good stuff, even though it probably will give rise to attachment or more attachment. But so often, I think us human beings dwell on the negatives. And we tend to drag ourselves down by doing that. And by dwelling on the past, by the way, or thinking about the past, contemplating the past, if this is done to learn, then it becomes meaningful. If it's done, like for instance, if you're having a mind that is very distracted like that and dwelling on past experiences, and you're dwelling on the negatives more often, then yeah, maybe dwelling on the pleasurable experiences in the past, you could say is an antidote or a short-term antidote to give up the bad feelings that you may be causing for yourself by dwelling on the negatives. So that's better, but the ultimate is best to be not attached and live in the present, of course. So learning from them becomes meaningful. If you're creating more attachment and more aversion, maybe in the short term it's meaningless, and more in the long term it's you could say harmful. Harmful in the sense where you will reinforce your attachment to the pleasurable memories, and then you will reinforce the aversion to the negative memories. Better to dwell on the positives than negatives, but best and still is to live in the present. Okie dokie. The 6 parameters I mentioned before, there's three aspects to each one. So that means 18 aspects to these 6 parameters. But especially generosity, the other ones can be broken up a bit too, subdivided. But especially generosity, you can subdivide one of the aspects 3 times. Okay, so you could say there's 20 aspects if you take that into consideration. All right, so that's that done, that piece of paper, which is really from last week. So generosity. Who is generous here? Do you see yourself as a generous person? Obviously, you can't answer me. I think if we dwell, or not dwell, I'm repeating that word, if we contemplate on how generous we really are, then maybe we will find we can improve. I like to say often that generosity is the door to the Dharma, because it allows us to decrease greed, decrease miserliness, decrease our attachment to self, to other, to things. When we have less attachment, our behavior will be better, our mind will be calmer, more patient, etc., etc. I think that generally us Dharma practitioners, I think, and other people of other religions, or even not religious, people are not religious, but have more care and consideration for others, have the potential to be more generous because we think about it. You don't just do it blindly, but also you don't stop yourself from doing it, because we can stop ourselves from doing it because of our worries. Oh, should I give away this apple? Oh, hang on a minute, maybe tomorrow I get hungry. I need the apple. But actually, maybe by giving the apple away today, someone maybe give you an apple in the future, just to use that apple as a metaphor. Okay, so the generosity, there are 3 types. I've mentioned them before, actually quite a few times. There's the giving of material aid, giving things, giving the apple, giving a meal, maybe giving money if people need that. There's also the giving to people that really, really need it. Whatever it is they need. They may need a hat, they may need a jumper. So you give that. Try to do it without having an expectation of anything in return. Not even creating good karma in return. Don't think about that. Just give. Start to learn to give spontaneously. Of course, you do have to base this on being realistic in this world as well. Obviously, you don't want to starve yourself, or if it's the middle of winter, giving away your only jacket. You know, I mean, you have to be realistic about it as well. Look after yourself as well. Be generous to yourself as well. Okay, so there's the giving of material aid. There is the giving of protection from fear. This includes forgiving others for their benefit, especially, but also for our benefit as well, so we don't hang on to anything like grudges and so forth. You know, there's many people go through life, in fact, all of us really, we have fears. Sometimes the fear has to do with not having material things that we need. We could even fear out looking in our own mind. I give an example. For many years, I used to visit prisons. I only gave that up to let other people take advantage of practicing like this a couple of years ago. And so many people in the prison, very fearful, even though some of them may behave like, oh, I'm a tough guy, whatever. But actually, they're only doing that because they have these inner fears. So I guess part of my practice to go there for them, for their benefit, was helping to give them this protection from fear. Also, other living beings, you know, spiders, for instance, you may be scared of the spider, but I can guarantee they're more scared of you than you are of them. So maybe by showing them loving kindness and being generous and letting them go outside in a jar or something, this is giving protection from fear to them. I could give more examples, but I'll leave that for other classes. Then, of course, there is the giving of the Dharma, the giving of the Dharma teachings, formally or informally, through your thoughts and your actions, your words. But also the giving of the Dharma could also be something as simple as teaching people good life skills, maybe teaching them how to grow nice flowers or good vegetables. Or if somebody doesn't know mathematics very well, teaching them mathematics. You know, it could be something as simple as that. Also, generosity of giving a smile. You know, this is like giving the Dharma as well, giving the results of the Dharma in a sense of more happiness as you traverse through the path. The giving of material aid, as mentioned before, can be broken up into three types. There is the ordinary type, which is really a little bit based on attachment to yourself, you know, making yourself feel good. Like when you're generous, you feel actually good when you do it. This is still very ordinary. It's still very good, but it's ordinary because probably the majority of the focus is on making yourself feel good. So this is the first type. The second type is great. This is when we're really starting to practice with less attachment and also being this kind of considerate in the sense that you know what you're giving. Like, for instance, you wouldn't, if there was somebody who was hooked on drugs living on the street, you wouldn't give them some heroin, for instance. Or even if you consider it, you know, maybe don't give money, maybe give them food, maybe give them some sort of shelter or clothing. That's just a very simple example. But then if people need something, you give them that, you know, and this is great. Also to the types of people that you're giving to. You could be giving to people that are really good people, maybe great masters and that, you know, live as monks or nuns, and you maybe give them things so they can share with others, so they can share the Dharma with others, as well as those material things. I remember people used to come to give my master, when I was living in the temple, quite often money donations. I was just amazed when I first was there, and I noticed straight away he'd give the money away to people that needed it. You know, didn't even put it in the donation jar. It was just somebody would come in, he knew they were struggling, straight away gave the money to them. So this is without really much attachment. Then, of course, there's even extraordinary great giving. And this is the great giving that is based on no attachment at all. Just bodhicitta intention. And you could even say maybe even based on the emptiness Now, of course, the ultimate giving really is that of the Buddhas, the spontaneous giving of the Dharma teachings for the benefit of all living beings. So that's you could say 3 aspects broken up as well. The first one broken up into 3 aspects as well on generosity. Then we have the morality or discipline. Maybe the word discipline is good to use here. To avoid negative actions of body, speech, and mind. That is the first aspect. Then we have the second aspect, which is to generate the positive actions of body, speech, and mind, and virtuous actions, virtuous deeds, to base everything that you're doing on virtue. Then, of course, there is benefiting others. Once again, this goes into the bodhicitta intention. So avoiding the negative, generating the positive and the virtuous, and bringing benefit to others. Of course, the benefit can manifest in many ways, isn't it? It can be very active, or it can be actually avoiding something. For instance, if somebody says to you, oh, I want to have teachings on emptiness, but you know that they need to practice generosity for a while first, morality for a while, before you even get involved in that subject. Because if you're teaching the emptiness teachings to somebody who's not ready to hear it, it could lead them to having nihilistic views, that nothing exists, so they eventually don't care. So it could be quite dangerous. So we should avoid doing that, Anyway, we've got about 40 seconds. What a pity. But I really wanted to reiterate what we were talking about last week a little bit, and also answer that question. But at least we got some way into doing this. We will finish the 6 of these and the 18 aspects next class before we move on to even more detail. So I rejoice in your goodness. I really appreciate your time and your efforts. Be well, be happy, make others well, happy. Smile more, worry less.